Hey, what's going on, guys? FlynnMasters coming at you with another video, and today I'll be continuing on with my series of ranking every Hell's Kitchen chef, this time ranking every chef from Season 6, which is, of course, my all-time favorite season, with pretty much every chef either being awesome or adding something to the season. This should be a very fun ranking. So let's get it started right away with my least favorite chef, and we actually have a change from my least favorite chef video, as I now have Louis at the bottom. Now, while of course his ejection on night one is iconic and the with coffee quote is one of the many things that makes this premiere so amazing, like at the end of the day, he was pretty sexist, and just seemed like a nasty person, while his quote is funny, like he was pretty much talking back to Ramsay, essentially saying Ramsay was wrong about his dish. So yeah, while the person above him is like gently more unlikable as a chef, like at least that person is a massive character, unlike Louis, who lasted all but 30 minutes. And speaking of, I have Suzanne now as a second to last as opposed to dead last. And like I said when talking about her, she's not that bad of a villain in the grand scheme of things. Like, yeah, she is pretty annoying at times, but it's mostly me like not liking her due to being Tennille's rival. Like, if it was anyone else, I probably wouldn't care as much. Obviously obviously Tennille being one of my all-time favorite characters, as you'll see way further down the list. I was always going to take her side over Suzanne's. So I don't hate Suzanne by any means, but she does have her negative moments. And considering everyone else above her is either nice enough or just iconic, I simply can't put her much higher despite her being a big character. On to the two most forgettable chefs of the season now for me, with number 15 being Sabrina. And the thing for me is, like, I forgot she damn near made a black jacket at times. Like, at least the person above her wasn't really a boot. Like, so it makes sense why they're forgettable. How can someone on this iconic of a season that made it pretty far just be a nobody? Like, that's insane to me. Again, like I've said throughout the series, even if it's not for the best of reasons, if you add something to the show, no matter positive or negative, like, I do respect that as a fan, as long as it's not like anything too nasty. But to add nothing to the show despite finishing in 7th place is a pretty big double whammy for me, which is why Sabrina lands very low here. And speaking of that other forgettable chef, at number 14 is Tech. And I mean, literally nothing to say about her. I mean, she seemed fine, but just not a very good chef. I mean, I guess she is kind of memorable, as apparently she was seen after her elimination, which a lot of people used to, prove Hell's Kitchen is fake or whatever, I guess. But I mean, other than that, she just adds nothing to the season like Sabrina. But at least she has the excuse of being an early boot. At number 13 is the first true boot of the season, in that they are eliminated in normal fashion, with that, of course, being Melinda. And the thing with Melinda, like, she was only in one episode, but she did provide a lot, of course. And unlike Louie, wasn't a complete asshole, So between her, really bizarre scene in her dish where she was like kind of flirting or whatever, and then it was just awful. And of course, making Ramsay go absolutely apeshit with her iconic pasta in the bin moment. Obviously I can't put her too high, but again, she did add a lot in the best premiere ever. I feel a bit bad for putting this person so low, but at number 12, I do have Jim. And Jim is one of those interesting characters where, yeah, he's quiet, but he still gives some pretty funny confessionals, and he obviously got screwed in his elimination. But like, despite leaving so early and maybe the editor's not giving him his justice, like, he, at the end of the day, he still is pretty forgettable in the grand scheme of things, especially on a season like this. Like, there's just no other way around it. So I know he's a cult fan favorite for others, but for me personally, I have some other personal cult fan favorites above him. And speaking of fan favorites, for season 5, this chef was ranked at the top of my list, but unfortunately, he was quite a lot worse this season, both personality and cooking wise, with that being Robert. And yeah, his attitude was awful this season. Blame others for his mistakes. Liddy even tried to screw over Dave in the finale. Like, that was awful. If this was any other situation, like, he would be a lot lower. However, I think we can all agree he should have never been brought back so soon. And like, to essentially do like 2 Hell's Kitchen seasons less than a year, like, I have to give him a little bit of a break. All the stress was on him as well, all the pressure to live up to that great chef he was last season, being the only returning chef, being the first ever returning chef in the history of the show. Like, I have to forgive him. I can forgive him just a little bit, especially when I just remember how great of a guy he was one season prior, So that's why I'm a little bit not as hard on Robert as others may be. And at number 10 is the person who Robert, and frankly the entire blue team, was most hard on, with that being Andy. And Andy's a very interesting chef, as he had a lot of heart and a good underdog run, but you just aren't super connected to him like other underdog chefs. And I think a lot of that is, has to do with the fact that, yes, the blue team is hard on him, but the blue team consists of some of the most beloved chefs in the history of the show, right? So it's a very, very odd situation. So I personally don't mind Andy. I'm just not super invested in him as a chef, so which is why he kind of lands here around the middle-ish. We got 2 early boots to talk about now who I think are just absolutely hilarious, with the first one being Lovely. Like, it's almost comical how lackadaisical she was, and the fact that she made it as far as she did is almost a miracle. I mean, she was an awful chef and even a bad waiter. Like, that's a double whammy. And her saying she moves so fast in the kitchen that Ramsay couldn't see her is just absolutely amazing. And the fact that her first name is indeed Lovely. Like, come on, the jokes write themselves. Even in the best of seasons, you always have to have your donkeys, right? At least in my opinion, you can't be too talented. And Lovely is definitely that funny donkey this season. Onto someone who a lot of people say is forgettable, but man, I freaking love Tony. I mean, even when he's getting yelled at, it's just so funny. Like him saying, "I always season, I didn't season it though." And just in general, one of the more underrated confessionalists in Hell's Kitchen history, in my opinion. Like literally, of course, but of course, that did not translate to the nomination ceremony as he gave an all-time bad plea. I think he's really, I think he would be a cult fan favorite early boot if it wasn't for the fact that he literally got eliminated after Joseph, and that does make sense. But man, I really really love Tony. I absolutely adore his passion and energy. Was an absolute spark plug who I love. He reminded me a lot of Lou Ross. I think he had a Lou Ross potential in him to be a really fun character. And it's a shame we lost him so fast. But speaking of Joseph, he lands here at number 7. And I know what you're thinking. How can he be this high? Well, it's simple. He provided us with the greatest moment in Hell's Kitchen history, if not flat out one of the best moments in reality TV history. Again, obviously a deranged individual, but his outrage on Ramsay has literally brought millions of eyeballs to the show, and so I have to pay my respect to him. On to number 6 now, and that is the final boot of the season in Ariel. And I've said this before, obviously Ariel is overshadowed by the other black jackets this season, especially the final 2. But she is kind of a cool chef in that, yeah, she's not a big personality, but she was still able to really dominate on the red team. And again, it's always good to have that flat out good chef in the kitchen who's a great human as well. Isn't in the drama or whatnot. She just puts her head down and gets to work, So it really feels like she fits perfectly on the season, despite, again, not being that big of a personality. At number 5 is a chef who I've been very high on when talking about her in the past, with that being Amanda. And like I've said before, I think she's absolutely adorable, and I, of course, love when a chef can be bubbly no matter how ruthless the competition gets. And even her more quote ditzy moments made for some fun TV, all those times forgetting how the count became a joke. Her signature dish where she literally served Ramsay 2 slices of bread and seemed to want to was more interested in getting him drunk than making a good dish. I just love Amanda. Similar to Ariel, she's just the perfect presence on a season like this, that's just either crazy, intense. You always have to have someone like Amanda on this season. On to number 4 now, and I have the runner-up in Kevin. And I'll be the first one to admit, Kevin wasn't as likable as the last couple of chefs I've talked about. But I'm sorry, I almost feel like it's an injustice to put him this low at number 4 after he freaking dominated the season on one leg. Again, the fact that he is an automatic top 2 from that alone just goes to show how amazing the top 3 is. But yeah, not an amazing character by any means, but what a gutsy chef to do what he did this season. Mad respect to him. So speaking of the top 3, we're at number 3 now, and these remaining 3 chefs are 3 of my all-time favorite chefs, with Van in the end coming in at number 3. And again, it's nothing he did wrong. It's just that the other 2 are so incredible in my opinion. But again, between his just insane energy, probably the best energy in the history of the show, his insane fight and passion, both literally and figuratively, as we of course had the iconic fight with him and JP. How can you not get excited every time he comes on your screen? He just simply has that presence and aura. Again, one of the best personalities in the show's history. At number 2 is someone who a year ago would have been below Van and Kevin for sure, but Tennille's story never ceases to amaze me. From nearly going home over freaking Lovely and pulling a Joseph and fighting with Ramsay, only to go on to dominate the season and literally be the biggest competition to Dave and Kevin at the end. Absolutely incredible. Tennille truly has one of the most fascinating runs, in my opinion, in reality TV history. Such a unique character within the show. What an insane comeback she had. Just absolutely incredible. But at number 1 is, of course, Dave. And again, he's kind of a meh personality. But what else needs to be said other than the one-armed bandit? To do what he did this season is truly one of the greatest and frankly magical things that ever happened on television. Again, it's something out of a freaking movie that a man who broke his arm would dominate despite all the stress that Hell's Kitchen causes to begin with, much less when you're in constant pain, 24/7. The fact that he not only won this season, but dominated, just absolutely, again, it is literally something you can't even script, So Dave is not just my favorite contestant from this season, but he is my favorite winner ever, as you guys know, and he might just be my favorite contestant of all time. So there you have it, guys, my ranking of every season 6 contestants. Again, this was a tough video to make, and I'm very interested to see what you guys think of this cast in the comments below, especially when ranking, the all-time great chefs. But yeah, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button to support the series, and be on the lookout for the season 7 ranking. And with all that said, take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.